What's up? Welcome back. I'm Tedward, and this is the Respect the Drive podcast. Today, I have improved my mic quality. I hope that this sounds a heck of a lot better than the first two episodes, primarily. No more pee-pops and weird breathing sounds. But today, my guest is Eddy Segal, who's actually my roommate, one of my closest friends. But since March, since COVID-19, we haven't been spending a lot of time together. And in fact, that stays true today, because we didn't do this in person. I've got him over FaceTime. So I hope that quality is all right with you. Should be fine. I think every other podcast is doing it this way at this point to try to limit exposure to other folks. But that doesn't mean we don't still have our phenomenal studio space up at Garage 42 in Woburn, Mass. So big shout out to them. We will be back up and running there pretty soon, doing some in-person interviews. But before we get Eddy started today talking about how he's keeping his Honda Civic Type R cool on the track doing time attack events, I just wanted to say a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys have really made the podcast and the YouTube channel possible lately. If you'd like to donate to that, head on over to patreon.com, search for Tedward Drives. And if you do have a car that you're looking to store, whether it's for the winter or for the foreseeable future, give Garage 42 a call. They'll set up a private tour for you to come see the facility and find out if it's the right home for your vehicle. So let's jump into it. Here's Eddy Segal.
Oh, so what's going on?
Well, I figured I wanted to sit down and talk about the Honda because when I did that video on the 2021, it's the 21 updates on the new Type R, I was talking about how they didn't actually solve the heating issues. And I got a lot of backlash from folks being like, what are you talking about, man? They opened up the grill, they did this, they did that. And I'm like, yeah, but none of that was enough, because I was watching you build your time attack car and have almost no success with taming down the overheating issues. And you went easily double, triple beyond what they had done, what Honda had done. So when this car got announced, especially what's the yellow one called, that special edition?
Oh my God! It's probably some sort of Japanese Zen garden.
No.
Word.
They called it something. I don't know. I
thought it was just called the limited edition. I mean, I don't know. The Phoenix Yellow limited edition. That's all I knew it of.
Yeah, maybe that is all it's called. It's so insignificant to me because I looked at it and I said, this isn't worth anything. Whatever they're going to charge for this is not worth it.
What they did was they looked at the aftermarket and they tried to incorporate some of the most heavily modified parts that most people would do anyways and add them on their car. So they did two-piece rotors, which was nice of them. They did some stiffer bushings, which a lot of people would switch out. And then they claimed, like you said, to have solved or helped cool the cars down by adding or enlarging the front grille and apparently changing the radiator out. From what I've been told, it's not actually any bigger, but it has more fins in it.
Oh, right. No, they changed the angle of the fins.
Whatever they did. I mean, again, it's so insignificant, and I almost feel like it's really, I don't know. I think it's dishonest of Honda to say that they, or for people to say, "Oh, we have solved the cooling issue. You know, you can run this car out. We've got a new Log R app, so now you can take this thing on the track and log your oil temps."
Yeah,
and all this stuff.
now you can log the failure in real time.
Exactly, you can log the amount of time before it overheats and gives you a nice.
Before we lose every Honda fanboy in the world who's listening, all 100 of them that are listening, what about? Tell me about your car, because your car, you started it off bone stock. You just started running this car on the racetrack, and it was an amazing. I mean, for what it was, it did what it claimed to do. It was just that when you started actually pushing it, as far as time attack is concerned, it didn't hold up against the heat.
Yeah. So, I bought a 2017 Type R, like a lot of people did, and I took it on the track, bone stock, nothing done to it, and it was awesome. I mean, for what it is out of the box, even on those ridiculous wheels, it was really fast. I mean, absolutely insane. And I remember driving it and being like, this is going to blow people away if you put some sticky tires and brakes on it. So fast forward a year, I decided to turn it into my track car because my previous car sadly met fate with a giant puddle. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Smokey. Smokey was an
Yeah.
8th gen Civic Si that revved to like 9,200 RPM. We're going to talk about that later. Remind me that we need to talk about that because I still get comments of people saying that you are a lying sack of shit because the dyno, I almost said 900. I dynoed 283 horsepower, and to this day I get angry comments saying that I am a dishonest YouTuber who lies because of that number. But
Yeah,
let's stick to this one for now. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Because we'll move backwards. So anyways, I decided to put some tires on it. I decided to put some brake pads, change the rotors out for 2-piece rotors, and I went out there, and the car was awesome. But what I started to notice, just like a lot of people do who track this car, is very quickly if you are driving, let's say, more than 7/10, so an advanced driver. So you're pushing it. The car decides to get really hot and pull timing, and eventually overheat and go into a limp mode, which isn't uncommon on stock vehicles. But this is the Type R. This is a car that did the Nürburgring in under 8 minutes. This is a car that really should have had some more R&D when it comes to the cooling capabilities. But so what I did is over, the time period of a year, I decided to try and tackle some of these issues. I changed the grill out. I changed the radiator out. I changed the intercooler out. And all of it really added up to giving me a little bit more time before it ended up overheating, before it eventually overheats. So I eventually had done a radiator, an oil cooler, an intercooler, which are the three main things that most people do. And to no avail, the car would still get very hot. Anything over 80 degrees, you're really going to have trouble. And, you really have to just get 1 or 2 laps in and then pull the car over and let it cool down.
Right. So when it first started, people were like, okay, the first thing people did was the grill because it's cheap. You just get a different grill and you're like, all right, now we're pretty much there. But that wasn't enough. And also you got to remember a lot of track events are held in summertime and most racetracks in the US are in the South or in Southern California. Like they're all like a normal American track day is 95 degrees plus.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That wasn't enough. So you went a couple steps further.
Yeah. I mean, I went further. I did an oil cooler, which is definitely the biggest savior of that motor. If you're tracking this car more than 3 times a year, you definitely should put an oil cooler on that car. We actually covered this in one of your YouTube videos a while back.
We did, because we talked about it should be said that every car that isn't like a GT3 RS needs stuff to be a consistent, like there is almost no stock OEM car out of the factory that can go and run 20 minutes of hot lapping. It's just not a thing. That's not a thing. Even my M3, it needs an oil cooler. An STI needs an oil cooler. Everything that you get that's like, ooh, that's my new race car, you have to upgrade the cooling systems because and the folks who are vehemently denying that Honda has any issues are probably folks who just drive them on the street and they, sure, they're driving hard for the street, but you're not gonna overheat this car on a couple little back road mountain runs.
No, or which is the other case is, and I hate to say this because I don't want to be sounding cocky, you're just not fast enough and you're not getting to the limits of the car.
Agreed. And I see that a lot in the BMW community because it's pretty clear cut when you go onto a BMW Facebook group and say like, hey, I'm having oil issues. You'll usually get 10 guys that will immediately come back and be like, well, my car doesn't have any oil issues. It's like, yeah, but that's because you're shifting at 6,000 RPM and you're probably 4 or 5 seconds behind me.
Exactly.
And then every guy with a time attack car is like, oh my God, it's so bad. This is what you need to do. This is the oil cooler that's going to do the trick for you. It's like, $1,200, install it, never look back. Um, and again, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't build a time attack car. My car is just something that, hey, once in a while I can run out and do a track day. And I know that I need to keep my eye out. But at the same time, like, I'm not racing wheel to wheel with anybody. So yeah, sure, we might go out and play a little cat and mouse with some other guys who are fast out there. And at some point, I'm going to just be like, oop, oil temps, and I'm going to back off. We don't pull into the pits and have an argument about like, hey man, I really walked you. They're just looking at me like, yeah, oil temps came up. And I'm like, yep.
Yep. Exactly. I think people forget that if you're not spending, with exceptions, there are exceptions like the Corvette and the Camaro ZL1 1LE. Those cars seem to have been designed for racetracks first. Their cooling systems are significant, but like, if you're spending under $90,000, usually you have to do some modifications, and even still, most of the time you have to do brake ducts, radiators, heat exchangers, and when you boost a car, it just compounds the issues.
Oh, see, that's another thing is people forget how hot turbos get. Turbos are
Oh my god.
not track friendly. They really are not. You've got to do extra work.
Yeah, I mean the turbo probably, I don't even know how hot it gets. It gets to a subatomic temperature.
It's Chernobyl down there.
Yeah, I mean this year I put a turbo blanket on it, and it's definitely helped, but it's still, you could roast a pig on this thing. I mean, it is so hot.
So how has it been this year? And also, what are the? I want to go into like what it's been like to track this year, but also I want to know more about what I haven't done any COVID track days. I haven't been out there, so like how is that different, and how does that impact the car? Because from what I've heard, these track days are, instead of being like here's your 15-20 minute session 4 or 5 times throughout the day, you're getting like here's 2 hours on track. Go figure it out.
Yeah, that is a great point to bring up. So, my first track day, first thing, was in June instead of, most of the time they start the end of March, beginning of April around here in Massachusetts. And I like that because it's still cold.
And where was that?
Cooler. It was at Canaan in June.
Canaan, New Hampshire.
So, and you've been there. It gets hot. Ironically, that day it happened to be mid 70s. It was actually pretty nice. And the car was fine, but what wasn't fine was actually me. I was extremely rusty. I hadn't done this in almost 6 months. And then B, like you said before, what they're doing is to, manage the amount of people that are inside the event, whether it be inside the actual grounds or on the track. They're instead just giving you sessions. So they'll say, okay, the advanced group is from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. That's your track time. Take it or leave it. Do what you want with it.
See,
now it sounds
that's
keep going.
no, but that's I can already see the problem, because for me, I mean, even if it's a track I've been to before, this first session out is like, okay, you do a few safety laps with everybody yellow flagged. You get out there, you start finding a little bit of a rhythm, and then you realize, whoa, I'm rusty, and these brakes, I need to bed them in again, and all kinds of things like that. And then, you come in the 45 minutes to an hour that you have to think about what you've just done is so critical. I look at that as like sleep. Your brain organizes your day for you in that hour, and then you go back out and suddenly it's a lot easier. But if you had to just stay out there and choose your own, time to come in for 15 minutes, I'd imagine that you don't get to really organize your brain and think in that 15 minutes.
Yeah. What I found was I was making a lot of rookie mistakes. I mean, simple things like leaving my gloves on the roof of the car and jumping in the car quickly and totally forgetting them on there because I am trying to get as much time as I can out there. Because instead of worrying about everything else, I'm worried about, oh my God, the clock's running down. I just got to get as much time in as I can. So I'm out there making mistakes on the track, making mistakes in the pits, and it's all for just this mental thought in the back of my mind that's like, okay, I've only got a finite amount of time I need to do this, or else I am wasting my day.
Yeah, you wasted your day, you wasted your money. And on the other side, I mean, how is the car as far as heat management? Because now that you've done all these upgrades, you haven't done the hood yet, maybe yet.
No,
but,
I have not.
But did it hang in there? I mean, is it better than it was?
It did. It actually held. It was way better this year than it was last year. Actually, so I did a little bit more than just a turbo blanket. I did a downpipe blanket, a charge pipe blanket. So the blanket that goes over the inlet tube to the turbo from the intake. There's a blanket over that. Because that is the main source of the heat, obviously, the turbo and that area. And then I also changed the grill out. So I changed the grill again to an even more aggressive grill that literally has nothing besides grill. There's no emblems. There's no slats. There's no, there's nothing. It looks like a guppy. It's a Jay's Racing grill. So, and that I think made the biggest difference, just like it did when I first put it on. The grill seems to make the biggest difference.
Well, there's one secret that we couldn't really talk about before, but I believe Acuity has announced this now, and the car had it last year, I think, or near the end. It did. And I want you to explain this because this is really cool.
This is really cool. So I'm going to botch this, so I am sorry to everybody at Acuity, especially Russell.
Well, you can go to the Acuity website and look this up because there's great graphics of it too.
Yes. Yeah, they do a great job of talking about it and explaining it. But I'll do my best. I'll do the Spark Notes version.
Okay.
So essentially, you're reversing the flow of the radiator by swapping the bottom hose. So instead of this is going to get really complicated without any diagrams, but you're basically flipping the radiator hoses from the outflow, so the flow that comes out of the engine, going to the bottom, it's going to the top.
Right. So instead of the hot coolant going from from top to bottom, it goes from bottom to top. Or am I missing that? Is it opposite?
No. I think that's the correct way. It's the opposite.
Right, because what they want to be able to do is get cold. Basically, heat rises, right? So instead of just putting hot coolant into the... God damn it.
Exactly. This is very difficult. So essentially what it does is it's giving cooler coolant temps into the engine.
Right. Basically, it has more time. So you reverse the flow from bottom to top to bottom, or whatever. I forget. I need to look at now. I need to look at the diagram because I know I'm botching this. I'm so sorry, Russell and Powen.
Yeah, we both. Yeah, this is embarrassing. But furthermore, when I put them on last year, it was on the hottest track day of the year, and it immediately made a huge difference. Specifically, it made the biggest difference in the cool down. So what I mean by that is when you let off the gas pedal and you just are coasting or you're going slowly around a track, usually it's called a cool down lap because you're letting the engine cool down, hence the name. Before, it would take sometimes 2 to 3 laps to get this thing down to a reasonable temperature. With these hoses, I could just do one little short cool down blast through the pits and it would be cool and ready to go again. And that was the noticeable difference. It was way quicker to drop temps. And it definitely has to do with those hoses.
See, that's great, especially with these types of track days, because instead of having to go out and do like 3 or 4 cool down laps, come into the pits, open the hood, do that whole crap. If you can just let off for a lap, that's glorious. Because my M3 is kind of like that, where I can go out, I can do a few I can do like maybe 2 actual hot laps, like me going like as hard as I can possibly go, where I'm like pulling muscles in my back because that seat is a nightmare. and then I've got to really just like baby it, because 2 things that are happening: 1, my oil temps are outrageous, and 2, my brakes are going to crack. I swear to God, those rotors will crack before the fluid boils. God bless RBF 600, not even 660. That stuff holds up really well.
Yeah. I mean, first thing, if you're going out there on the track to, try to beat everybody and set lap times, you really should consider stepping back a little bit, because that's very dangerous. Just jumping out there and just going until either the engine expires or worse. You really want to mentally be in a good state.
This is why
And
it's critical to have good instructors too, and like good role models when it comes to track
absolutely,
driving. Because I think, it's easy to think, oh, I go to a track day, I go drive really hard, and then I go home. It's like, no, there's a lot, like you need to be very cautious with your instrument. These cars, most people's cars, are not built to go hardcore for an hour or even 35 minutes. Like
yeah,
35
and
minutes in a stock car, like full blood, like it would literally, like I could go and I would explode.
yeah. I mean, what you're asking for it to do is basically go, sit on the rev limiter for a long period of time. We're talking, minutes,
I think
and that may not. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry, what was saying?
a good example. I mean, if anyone's a videographer out there, most cinema camera has like huge cooling fans on it, right? So if you need to be recording for more than 30 minutes at a time, those cameras have massive cooling fans on them to keep them cool, to record in like HD or 4K. Whereas when you get like a Canon 1DX or a mirrorless camera like a Sony A7 III or A7S or A7S2, those cameras, they can only record at their highest settings for like maybe 15 to 20 minutes before they literally overheat and say, no, we're done, because it will just melt everything internally. So although they have the specs, right? So your car has these specs. It can do 0 to 60. It can do the Nürburgring in this much time. It can do this braking performance, all that stuff. It can do that under certain conditions, but it cannot just do it forever to your heart's content.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very ridiculous to assume that your car can do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds every single time, especially when it's a manual, and you're launching it.
Absolutely.
So, and
That's why I think autocross is actually pretty abusive to cars, because you don't launch cars at a racetrack. Like it would be weird to do that. Like at least on track, you're able to slowly bring it up to temperature, enjoy the car, and then bring it back down. Whereas like at an autocross, you're just like, okay, I idled it for 10 minutes in the parking lot. Oil temp's just over the first dot. You go and you launch it. So yeah, that's great. Your oil might be warm enough, but your diff is not. Your gearbox is maybe just a little bit up to temp. Your tires are totally not. And then you go rip on it, red line, and then stop. No airflow. Just cool it.
yeah, when I was younger, I would autocross a ton, and I still love it. I love autocrossing. I think it's a great beginner intro into high performance driving. But there is something to be said about understanding the limits of a car and also the machinery. Because I mean, now that I look back, I don't think I even thought about the the temperatures of anything, because I was just so unaware of what was going on. But now that I look back on it, it's terrible for a car.
Oh, it's brutal. Absolutely
Horrible.
brutal. All right, let's go to the 8th gen for a little bit, because your 8th gen Civic was honestly one of my favorite cars, because it was the kind of thing where it had like basically no torque, and it had this beautiful transmission and amazing steering. You put very sticky tires on it, so it was a joy to drive fast and just chuck into corners. And I mean, you tuned it and cammed it and did all these things. And somehow it managed to make 283 horsepower to the wheels on a Mustang dyno.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that was at
Mustang.
Brent Tuning. Tell me what was done to that car, because to this day, I still get comments on that video about how I'm a garbage human being and I'm a troll. And every time I see those comments, I'm wondering, did Eddy lie to me 3 years ago?
All right. You know what? I'm going to tell you the truth. It's all a fake. And I also was the one who killed Kennedy. No.
You were
So
you and your 8th gen Civic were on the grassy knoll.
exactly. So I love that car. I miss that car dearly. But what people have to remember is, and you were there at the end of its life, it was on its last legs.
Oh, that thing, we did rev it to 10,000 RPM.
Yeah, I mean, it was beat its entire life.
It stopped making power about
Yeah,
9,200.
you were just the last 800 RPM were just for shits and giggles,
It
just to
was
see
just to see that needle go beyond.
exactly, just past the tack.
The like you turn the volume up to 11.
Exactly. So that car actually has a pretty simple-ish setup for a semi-built engine. So the top end, very simple, drag cartel DC 2.2 camshafts, Super Tech valve springs, stock valves, a Acura throttle body off of a R. What was the one that weird looking Acura?
The
ZDX?
ZDX.
Yeah, so that's the throttle body that's on it. That was on it.
It was like the elephant racing dick, the whale dick
Yep,
that
and then it
intake.
had a hybrid racing intake, which at the time was the intake to have because it would scoop up water at an alarming rate.
Which we discovered, or which you I shouldn't say we. I was
Exactly.
not there. I cannot corroborate that story, but I believe you. So,
Uh,
did it make that power? That's a real
yeah.
and what about injectors? I feel like people were like, "Oh my god, if it didn't have this."
Stock injectors.
All right, that's where I get the most comments about this car is no effing way is he fueling this thing. And I'm like,
So
seriously,
it had,
go through the video. I have to
I
deal with
haven't
this on a
looked.
weekly basis, dude, because like I get alerts for my comments, and I'm
I
like,
haven't looked.
I wake up to this shit. I've woken up to it for 3 years.
I haven't looked in years. I'm going to be honest, and I wasn't there when it got dynoed. So I was in Florida on vacation.
Oh, the conspiracy continues, man.
But I'm sure if I wanted to, I could probably call up Bren and phone a friend, and he could confirm it.
Well, he usually videos everything too. I bet there's a video of that car.
I'm sure there is, but it's been on the dyno multiple times. I would say that car's been dynoed more than all of my vehicles altogether. That thing was the dyno whore. Because it was good because it's NA. It was really good at baselining the dyno when it had either gotten repairs or there was a new dyno. Because you have to, when you buy a new dyno, you want to have very similar, data, because next thing you know, another car, the same car comes in on a new dyno, it could really screw the car up and the tune.
Sure.
If it's reading low or high.
Right. So okay, we just dynoed this car 2 months ago and nothing's been changed, and it dynoed, 225. So we bring in the new dyno, we put this car on, it reads 223, we are on target.
Exactly. It was used for that purpose. I mean, when he moved to the new shop, the car went right on the dyno because it was perfect for it.
And you were one of the first to dyno. Actually, totally side story, but you were one of the first people to dyno an actual production version of the Type R.
Oh yeah, that was really cool.
That went straight on the dyno, like the week you bought it.
Straight on the dyno. Same tank from the dealership, so who knows what was in it.
And just to give everyone some clarity on how early you were an early buyer of that car, you paid over sticker.
Yeah, I was stupid.
Well, no, I don't think it was stupid though, because they were over sticker for a good 6 months at least.
They still are.
It's crazy.
They still ask for it. And now actually they're even more expensive, which is another thing. They've gone up significantly in price. I think like $1,000 or $2,000.
Well, that's because they have a volume knob.
Oh yeah, the volume knob. I forgot.
Your car is obsolete. I'm sorry.
No. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
A heap of garbage.
Garbage. So anyways, yeah, no. So we threw it on the dyno and made some crazy number. I forget. I think it was like 280 something.
It was 283. Trust me, I know that, like, because I have to think about it all the time.
Well, so are we talking about the 8th gen or the?
Sorry, the 8th gen. I don't remember the R. The R was very close to 300. It was like 291 or something like that.
Yeah, you remember numbers more than I do. I know. I can't remember what I ate yesterday.
I know it wasn't 300, but I do remember it was like painfully close to it, and we were all like, "Whoa, this is like Honda really made this car. Like this is."
Yeah.
It was like a Porsche. When you put a Porsche on a dyno, it's like the real number. It's like that you think you're hearing crank. They're like, "Nah, dude, that's it. I said 500. No, yeah. It's 495."
Yeah, it was impressive to say the least, because we didn't know what kind of fuel was in it, and who the hell knows. And it wasn't broken in yet, or if they'd even needed to be broken in.
Right.
that I
Well,
broke it in.
let's go back to so all right. We talked about cooling stuff, but you've done a lot. Your Honda has not just been an effort in cooling. You've also done some aero, but you've never done any tuning. The engine is completely stock,
No,
other than I guess
no.
the reversed coolant flow.
Yeah, I mean, besides that, and a drop-in filter and a tube, a silicone tube. It is a stock tune and a stock motor, and it's got a cat back on it now. Thanks to our friends from AWE Exhaust.
That actually sounds good. I did a little. There's a couple video clips of that somewhere on the
I
YouTube
love it.
channel. That thing's great.
I love it. I like the sound. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's hard to make these new engines, these newfangled 4 cylinders with turbos, sound good, and they've done a pretty good job. So, congrats
It's
to
not
them.
it's not offensive though. It's not a bad sound. I would say that like F80 M3s, the S55, it's like it's offensive. I'm offended by it. But like
Yeah.
I'm not offended by the Type R because I don't think it sounds bad. It just doesn't. It's just not the days when you had a 9,000 RPM 8th gen. That car sounded like an actual race car.
Yeah, I mean, the days of an engine sounding good for one are over.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I think the last of the V10s and V12s from Italy are going to be like, that's going to be sad.
Oh, don't even. We're gonna have to have those dudes in the casket, the dancing casket, show up for the last V12. But no, I mean, I think it sounds great. But yeah, no. To your point, because of the cooling issues I experienced last year, and all through last year, and even into this year, I just feel like there's no point tuning it because as soon as you tune it, you spike the boosts up. It's just going to get hotter. You're spinning everything faster. You're pushing things beyond what they were designed to do. And I already am getting too hot. So what's the point?
What's on the horizon for how long are you going to run this car? And I mean, are you personally feeling like you're still going to be competitive on the track?
I was never really that competitive to begin with. It was more of just a thing of pride at this point because I find it really fun to drive a Honda Civic on the track. Because a lot of people don't realize how good they are on track, and B, I enjoy a challenge, and it's definitely more of a challenge than going out and buying a Viper ACR, which I can't afford, but I'm just, using it as an instance, and just, going out there and being the fastest.
There is definitely a joy in having a car that is similar speed as the other vehicles on the track. And you bring up a good point when you say the Viper, because unless all your buddies are running GT3 RSs and other Vipers, you're gonna be like really bored. It's like you're playing the same game but with a Game Shark. Cheat codes. I don't know. Do kids know what a Game Shark is? Am I old?
I don't think so.
Nobody.
No, you just. I know what a Game Shark is, but I don't think half of your viewers know what that is.
At least I didn't say Game Genie. That was the one for the Super Nintendo. Do you remember the Genie?
That was before my time, Tom.
All right. Well,
I know what it is, but I didn't have a Super Nintendo.
A Game Shark was like this. It might have even been third party. I don't know if Sony even.
It was
sold
no. It was totally third party, and essentially what it was a back door into the game, and it allowed you to basically put whatever you wanted in these games.
And it was a physical thing with it was like an actual block that you would plug into the back of your PlayStation, and you'd turn it on, and then it came with all these internal codes, but you could go into it and program extra codes. So what you'd do is there's two ways to play Gran Turismo. You start the game and you've got a memory card and you get your licenses and you start with I don't even remember the car. They get like a Peugeot 206 or something miserably slow, or a Civic. And then you'd work your way up. Okay. And yeah, sorry about the Civic. But then you could, if you get to a point where you're just like, dude, I just want to drive like an Escudo Pikes Peak, like hill climb car everywhere and do all the things, you would go get a Game Shark, and have unlimited money, and it would just say like 9999999, like that was your bank account, and you're like, good, let's tune all of the things. It did take away from the game though, because you weren't earning anything, and maybe that's like a good life lesson. It's like you win the lottery, and it's just like, who even cares anymore? What's the point? I'm not deriving happiness because I'm not earning it. But I will say I had a really fast twin turbo Lotus Esprit. I think it had 1,000 horsepower.
Oh my God, Game Shark, dude, that is a trip down memory lane.
But God, I really got sidetracked on that. But that's kind of what owning like a Viper ACR is like in the midst of like normal people, right? Like you go to a racetrack, you go to a track day, like our mass tuning track days. If you show up with a Viper ACR, you literally brought a Formula One car. Like that, there's nobody else who's gonna touch that. And while you might set some fun lap times, you're also going to be waiting in traffic. You're going to be frustrated by people who aren't pointing you by ahead of time while you're doing 160 down the back straight. That's just, there is definitely a joy in owning something that you all can enjoy. And that's one of the reasons why, for example, when we go on our little road trips up to Vermont, New Hampshire, we haven't done that this year, but we all had kind of fast cars. Everything was at least 400 horsepower. I didn't ever want to bring my 911 to those things because, everyone does their pull, in, I won't say where, but we've all definitely broken 160 on these roads. I mean, if we're heading somewhere and we're all doing 160 for a little while and then slow back down, like I'm going to be chugging along in my big wheel Porsche, trying to maintain it. Cause I mean, will the car do like 140? Yes. And me and you have done it on really old tires and we shouldn't have done it, but like it's not happy there. I wouldn't do that regularly.
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a great point about, the truth about speed and having a fast car, because, it is a one-trick pony sort of deal, even on the racetrack. It's really cool for that, couple times you go to the track and you are the man, okay, the fastest. But then it kind of wears off, and then people are like, oh, here's that guy again. Here he shows up, and you're the dude that everybody's just like, oh, let him go by. And you're not actually learning anything. You're not gaining any confidence. You're not actually learning anything about yourself. The only thing that you're doing is just burning gas and tires.
Right, and you're not necessarily even fast. Maybe I'm like 15 seconds faster around a big circuit than your Civic, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm a 15-second faster driver, because maybe the car has 20 seconds in it.
Well, that's exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that you can compare to or gauge to, so you're kind of in your own little bubble. But that being said, there's always a spot. There's always someone that's faster. So that's another thing. You always have to have expectations that, someone's always going to be faster.
I just did that slow car fast video when I had Eric's 98 M3 4.5, the 4-door M3. Really, really well built together car. Like, he's built something really special, very nice. I mean, it's like driving a brand new M3 E36. It's like super rare. Like, everyone's E36s are destroyed. Like, I've never driven one that wasn't just a rattling bag of bolts or like a full-blown stripped race car. But my audience, I forget this sometimes, my audience is not just United States. So when you say slow car fast, the Europeans and the rest of the world go bananas at you, because they're like, this idiot is calling an E36 M3 slow. And like, they don't know what the American version of the car is. They don't know that we got like a basically 200 wheel horsepower car, which by its own right was not slow in the 90s. But I mean, dude, like a V6 Camry is like under 6 to 60 right now. I think it's like 5.7 or 5.8 seconds. A Honda Accord is like 5.6. These are fast cars. These trap triple digit speeds in the quarter mile. And that's a friggin' normal ass car.
It's the whole quest for speed has gotten so cheap that now it's starting to dwindle down into ordinary cars. I mean, heck, the Honda Odyssey, what a fast minivan.
I can't believe what you can do. So right now, I literally have it in my driveway right now, a 2020 Dodge Durango SRT. It's got the 6.4 liter Hemi that for the 392. And Eddie, this thing screws. It's got 295 section tires on every corner, not staggered. It's just like, nope, you're getting square. I kind of wish they made a wide body version of it with the 305s like they do with the Challenger and the Charger. But this thing launches consistently. Like I have had it. It gives you all the timers on the dashboard. And when I say the timers, I mean, the car is a video game. It literally posts up and says 0 to 60, ready. And you stop. It says, let's go. And then you hit the launch button, slam your foot on the brake, floor it, drop the brake and go. And this thing will just repeatedly, and I don't do it repeatedly because I have no idea what the heat is like in this transmission and I'm not about to be the one that breaks it. But this thing will just, anytime you want, sub 4.8 seconds, 0 to 60s, like on any surface.
I mean, I think what's more impressive is the brakes, because that thing probably weighs close to 6,000 pounds.
Yeah, it's 5510 dry, I think. And that is not light, and you definitely notice it in the corners, but it handles surprisingly well. I had it out on the highway. There's this on-ramp that I like because it's a hard right into a little bit of a chicane, and then there's a straightaway. And you just run it up to the end before there's another right onto the highway. So you get this beautiful uphill straightaway, and it really tests the torque and power of a car, because if you can get a car up to 100 before you brake into the last corner, it's a legitimately fast car. I had this up around 90. I want to say like 95. I mean, this is a truck.
This is a Dodge Durango.
It's a 3-row seat truck with Blu-ray and DVD players. There's TV screens behind the friggin' driver and passenger seat, cooled seats. The thing can tow 8,700 pounds. So it's designed to bring your ACR to the track with your racing family.
Oh my God. Well, it's crazy. It's just, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing that cars have gotten so fast. I mean, even like a base, Focus or a Civic with those turbo motors, they're not slow.
No. I mean, a Ford Fiesta ST, I think, is like a great example of when you have a good balanced car. That's the right amount of power. Like that's what used to be fast. Like for like literally 1960s through the 1980s, like a Fiesta ST was like that would have been the hot hatch of your dreams. That would have destroyed everything on every racetrack, barring like, crazy Panteras.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talk about this all the time. Like when people are like, "Oh, my '70s Chevelle SS is really, really this monster," it's just untamable. It's so funny because those things are not that fast in today's world.
Most like authentic muscle cars are kind of dogs. Now I gotta take a step back a little bit because I haven't driven a lot of them, but I mean, we know what they are. You got these carbureted old cars, and I will say, yes, they are hard to tame, but not necessarily because of the power. It's because they're on platforms that like are archaic. I mean, even with 200 horsepower, a Chevelle is probably terrifying at 90 miles an hour.
Yeah. Oh, no. I would say it's more of the factor of the front is doing something different than the back when you're going around a corner.
Yeah, there's no saving it if something bad happens.
Yeah. It's but like, speed wise, if you look at like the Fast and Furious movies when it's like the old muscle car Dom and his, muscle car versus like a Lamborghini
or the Eclipse or whatever, yeah,
or whatever.
The Supra.
I mean, the reality is, I don't think maybe apart from Dom's Charger, because that thing always had some ridiculous engine in it, but like the other cars, I don't think they'd really stand a chance if they were the stock 1970s cars.
No. No, I do think they made crazy things. I do think they made things that were way faster than anyone should had any business driving, especially on the tires that people were using.
Oh, back
and the
then?
brakes,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
are you kidding me? Like,
drums, yeah,
dude, it's legitimately horrifying. It's no surprise that auto deaths were psychotic in the 70s because no one was wearing a seatbelt, and yeah, maybe they didn't have cell phones, but everyone was just like, oh, I'm just gonna sidle up to my honey, and she's gonna sit in the middle on this bench seat. And then when we you know, someone stops short in front of us, we're going to lock up all fours, slam through them, and go through the windshield. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, you become passengers in the car in front.
Jesus. How did
Yeah.
anyone survive?
That's when you take it for granted how safe cars have really become.
Well, and even in the last 10 years, one of the big safety things you notice is where the door sill, where the window starts in the car. Because my M3, for example, the door is below the window is below my shoulder. I can put my arm like on the windowsill. Whereas like every new car, you can't do that anymore because they're protecting your body, like from the neck down. So if you get hit from the side, you're not going to just get smashed in the shoulder. Like you actually have a car from the neck down. And that is definitely apparent when you get into new cars that you're much more surrounded. But unfortunately, the byproduct of that is reduced visibility by a long shot.
Yeah, it definitely like going from the 8th gen to the 10th gen, which isn't that long ago. I mean, I think they made the 8th gen until like 2009. Which yes, okay, it was 11 years ago, but it really isn't that long ago. The amount of progression in safety technologies is unbelievable. I mean, I don't think you could even have gotten any sort of passive technologies, and now you can get them in almost any of these cars.
I mean, when I was in high school, and probably when you were in high school, well, you grew up in probably a wealthier town. A lot of kids drove Cavaliers, Pontiac Sunfires, or even the old, like what Jason Camisa calls the bitch basket, the Volkswagen Cabriolet and Cabrio. Oh my God. Who buys this shit for their children? What, like that is I feel like you had to be like a more clever version of Jean-Benet Ramsey's parents. You're just like, yeah, I want to kill my kids. What's the cleverest way to do it? Here's your new Pontiac Sunfire convertible, darling.
Oh my God. Yeah. When I was in high school, the big three, as I'll say, the ones that everybody drove were, besides that weren't their parents' cars, of course.
Right.
That early 2000s Ford Taurus, so that really ugly round one.
Yep.
Those Toyota Camrys like you and I had.
Yeah,
those
like
were big.
95, 96 Camrys.
Yep. And then it was like Cavalier. I'll throw them all together. Cavalier, first gen Focus, and like Dodge Stratuses. Those were big.
The first gen Focus. Now, oh God, the Dodge Strat. We'll talk about that in a second. Holy shit. Those were fast. The V6 Stratus. Those things,
yeah, because that was like a Mitsubishi motor.
Yeah,
so
that thing hauled. Like that had no business going as fast as it went. But the Ford Focus, and I remember, so when I was in high school, I worked at Puma. I worked in retail. And it was around this time where, I was like 17 and I probably was I was discovering different crowds, right? So I had different kinds of friends, different groups. And, I got into a little bit with the work friends there. And I remember there were this couple that worked there. They were a few years older. They were probably like maybe 20, like 19 or 20. Their names, I'm going to give their names. Kelly and Kyle. I'll never forget these two. They were like wicked scenesters. Kyle looked like Jake Weil, like really tall dude, had like the gauges in his ears, wore a hat, lip ring, all this stuff. Like he was like that scenester kid. And Kelly, blonde, little scruffy ponytail, really cute, really small, tight jeans, the whole, always like black nail polish, that kind of thing. And they both loved cars. Now she drove a Cobalt. It wasn't an SS, but it was a blue Cobalt that she wishes was an SS. And and then he drove remember the first gen Focus SVT.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Those are cool.
Now one day they invited me to go with them to Copley, which was a big deal. We live out in the boonies, so Boston was like, whoa, we're going to Boston, And it was the kind of thing where I'm like, I don't even want my parents to know I'm going with these people. So I either met them somewhere or they picked me up in the Focus. And I remember being in the back of the Focus, getting onto 495, onto the highway, like a big 3-lane highway. And he lifts mid-corner on the on-ramp. And that was like the biggest oversteer moment I've ever experienced. And I thought, oh my God, we're going to die in this thing. And he caught it. God love him, he caught it. And it wasn't graceful. It wasn't pretty. And this is like 5 minutes away from my house. We've got to drive an hour. So like the whole drive there was just horrifying to me because I'm like, oh no. But I'm thinking like, were those cars that prone to lift off oversteer, or was he just like going way too fast?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it probably had European, handling characteristics, which is lift off oversteer. But also, I'm sure he was going way too hot, and it compounded the effects of the oversteer by when he braked really hard, the back end got even lighter.
Right. It may have even been wet. Like it could have just been one of those situations where, like, looking back today, if I had like looked at like I could go back and watch this happen, I'd be like, oh my God, like literally everything went wrong. It's like a plane crash. There's a Pakistani plane crash that happened like 6 months ago, and they finally came out with the report. Not only did the airline pilot not have a valid license because he never got one. Think about that.
Oh, wonderful.
He didn't, his landing gear didn't go down, and he tried to land it, didn't know the gear wasn't down, touched the runway when it slammed the engine and decides, we're going around, sends it back up and immediately crashes into the city.
Oh,
right. So you can deconstruct that. Okay.
Oh,
and as you watch it, knowing what you know, you're like, oh my God, like literally everything went wrong from start to finish. And so if I were to go back and watch some of the crashes that my friends had, it would be like, wow, you knew nothing about car control.
Yeah, I would say only in the last decade has, my abilities and to understand car control in general have really, come to use. I don't think in my early 20s and late teens, I gave a shit about what the hell the car was going to do.
Well, you know what it is when you're young and dumb and you're not actually out on track or whatever, or you don't have proper training, all you think is, I know how to drive. But the thing is, if someone sat you down with like a theory test and said, if this happens, what do you do? A, B, C, or D? You might not be able to answer it. Like, for example, your front wheel drive car, mid corner, the rear steps out. A, floor it. B, you know what I mean? Like, and you've got to be able to know, like, I need to add power to the front to drag its ass out of this spin.
Yeah.
Whereas like in a rear wheel drive car, there's a different approach. And front wheel drive cars always scared me because I wasn't used to them. I mean, honestly, like I do think that the fastest drivers or some of the best drivers are the ones who know a front wheel drive platform inside and out.
Well, thank you, Tom.
I really do, because I'll be honest, front wheel drive I still have some PTSD from some really sketchy spins in my teen years. Because there's something about a rear wheel drive car. If it steps way, way out, you can always, you either just spin it intentionally 2 feet in and it's gone, or, you feather the throttle and find your way back. Right. Whereas in a front wheel drive car, it's so much more like this brute force thing where you need to point where you need to go. You need to floor it. And when the rear snaps back, you need to make sure that you've released the lock on the wheel, or else you're going to go into this horrific secondary spin the other direction. And I've felt that before, having done it as a dumb 16-year-old. And I really don't like that feeling.
You know
what?
So the funny thing with the front wheel drive cars, I think of a front wheel drive car as like a Hoosier Slick. It is unbelievable in its limits. It'll do things that you didn't even think were possible in a car, let alone a front wheel drive car. But once you go over that threshold, once you start finding the end of the Hoosier's lifespan, it'll spit you out good. In a front wheel drive car, when you start having oversteer and you're not prepared for it, or you do something that, counterintuitive, like lift off or slam on the brakes, like what you should do in most other cars, you're going to have a seriously bad day.
Dude, it's like an elastic band. Well, all right, I think that's our hour. This is kind of like gonna be the cruise show. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, you and
it's
I,
Eddie.
exactly. I mean, you and I are always, well, not recently because of COVID. It's weird. It is so strange that we're doing this over the phone because usually you're about 10 feet from me.
I haven't. We're like twins. I've been 10 feet from you for like 2 years.
I know. It's
And
crazy.
it feels like I've been ripped out of my home. But I mean, it's not all bad. The only thing that's tricky is trying to do things like this. It gets put off and off and off. And at first you're like, nah, we can get together. And you're like, you know what? This is stupid. We don't need to do this. Like, we can
Yeah.
just do this on the phone and be safe and not have to have that worry. You know, it's kind of like, I mean, you've been in a relationship for long enough, but I remember the days when maybe you make a mistake in your dating life, and don't use the proper protection. And for the next 3, 4, 5 days, it consumes you like, oh no, did I get anything? And, you know, you go get tested and all that fun stuff. But it's like, you know, this is just like that. It's just that, you know, you go and you stand in a room with somebody, and then for the next 3, 4, I mean, I guess 14 days even, you're like, did I get sick from that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just strange that, you know, technically we live together, but for the last, I don't know, 5 months now, probably, it's going to be 5 months, you've been at your house and I've been at mine, or I've been on the Cape.
It's very bizarre. And we're still paying that rent.
So still paying it. So, but hopefully that'll change. I mean, hopefully, you know, this goes away, but I don't think it's going away anytime soon. But, you know, I just want to tell, you know, especially you and a lot of people, you know, it is hard. It's not easy.
No.
You know,
And
so don't feel ashamed that, you know, you're struggling or stressed out or anxious about this, because it's no joke.
no. And, you know, I talked about that in the GT4 video, mainly because, I mean, even in our group chat, you've seen, I'm like doing those like mini cries for help where I'm like, guys, I miss that. Like, I miss you. I'm actually, you know, you feel like you're in prison. You feel like you want to crawl out of your own skin. And it is hard. And then at the same time, I'll get commenters who are like, oh, you believe the hoax? I'm like, dude, it's a virus. It's a real, like 100 and something thousand Americans dead. Like, you're going to come and tell me that, like, oh, never forget 9/11, but oh, this is fake. Like, you can go look at the graves. Like, this is happening right now. I don't understand how people politicize a sickness. It's very upsetting. And you know, the most you can do is take personal responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you're living with people who have underlying conditions or are elderly.
Right.
The last thing you want to do is, oh, you know, I'm going to go to the bar with some buddies, and, you know, but they're not going to be around, and we're going to be safe. You're still putting people at risk.
Well, and every time you say, oh, we're going to be safe, like, there's always 10 people without a mask. There's always those people, you know, every event that I've been to where everyone's like, oh yeah, come on, we're just going to hang out outside. Like, no one's wearing a mask. And I'm like, okay. And then, so I stand far away from everybody, and, you know, someone walks up to you, they want to like shake your hand. I'm like, dude, no, we're not doing handshakes here.
I know. And you look like the bad guy.
Yeah, and and it's frustrating. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to stand up for your family if you are living with people who may be immunocompromised. So, I don't know.
Absolutely. It's a very uncomfortable topic. It really is. And it's
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It should be so black and white and obvious that, like, hey, there's this thing that people have, and it can potentially kill you. And even with a 1% or lower mortality rate, that is a lot of people when you think about millions of Americans. I mean, 1% of 300 million is a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to see that. That would devastate the economy. Like, ravage it, destroy.
Yeah.
So,
Wear a mask.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the thing. I know this is a car. I know there's going to be people who are like, oh, stick to cars, shut up. But, you know, this is I mean, I am sticking to cars, and my car world has been changed by this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Track days are not the same. Dealerships are not the same. Even me driving cars are not the same. When the press people come to drop off a car, they come, they've got masks, they're spraying hand sanitizer and, you know, whatever all over the car. You know, when I have a fan car or a friend who's loaning me a car for a day, they can't come with me. That used to be a thing. A lot of my drives, I'd go out with them and they'd be in the passenger seat, because I'd maybe have some questions about it, or like, especially if it's a tuned car, someone who's like, they've built it. Like, I mean, it's nice to have the owner there when I can quickly ask like, oh, why does it do this? Or did you change this? This feels different. I can't do that.
Yeah, it's just very odd. I mean, we all would get together. I mean, just in general, we would get together. Can't do that anymore,
Dude,
and it's
I
just
miss
really
it.
hard.
And
I know.
and that's part of the car community, because think about it. We all got together, and what's the most satisfying thing to do on like a Friday, Saturday night in the summer? You all just jam your friend's driveway up with nice cars, and you all just walk around, you're sipping your beer, and you're looking at each other's cars, and ooh, you got that paint corrected. Oh yeah, check out the PPF. I just got new wheels. Oh, you got to hear this new exhaust. Like, that was our life every single week. And now we're on this group chat and we all talk to each other. But you know what? A lot of things don't even translate well to text. And that's the thing I'm having a hard time with, because I have a dark sense of humor. And often that comes off negatively. So sometimes I type shit and people are like, what the fuck did you just say? And I'm like, oh, if you heard me say it, you'd have laughed. I know. And when I read it, I'm like, fuck, that looks bad. Well,
Thank you. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah. Well, what's next what's next? I mean, do you have another track day coming up?
Yeah, I've got one this Saturday, actually.
Where are you going?
At Thompson, down the street from you.
God, I love that track. It's a little rough. The pavement, there's some sketchy sections of pavement, but God, it's a fun track. It flows really nicely.
I like that track a lot.
It's a fast track too. That straightaway.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, I don't think people realize how lucky we are to have so many good tracks in New England.
Oh, we're spoiled rotten.
We're spoiled.
Everyone thinks California has all these tracks, and they do, but it's a huge state. And every time someone goes to a track day there, they're leaving their home at 3 a.m, and it takes them hours to get wherever they're going. Whereas we are like, oh, it's 2 hours away. What a pain in the ass, I got to wake up at 6.
I mean, I would say Palmer is up there, one of the best racetracks in the United States, and it's in our backyard.
Easily top 10. It's a different kind of track. I'd say Palmer is probably one of the most modern racetracks in the country as far as design.
Yeah, it's not just your usual straightaway setup with, apex after apex. It almost flows like a back road. That's what I tell people a lot of it. It feels like you're driving like an unbelievable back road.
Well, good luck at Thompson, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the Honda holds up. Have you changed? Yeah. Have you changed anything from last track day to this one?
No, the only thing I've changed is my attitude, which is have a better attitude with the whole situation. You just got to go in it, be as positive as you can, because it's not going to be your usual. I mean, and we all have to adapt. So,
well, I know this is really specific, but how is it when you are off track? I mean, because one of the things that was nice is like, I was never paying for a paddock, but you park outside and then you walk in with your buddies. But I guess there's not really time to do that at these events anyway.
Well, so actually this is going to be the first semi-normal event. What I mean by that is it's an all-day event. It's not just, here's your 2-hour slot, good fucking luck.
Right.
This is a full-on, 4 run groups, all-day activity. So I'm really, I'm not expecting much, but when I was there, it's hard to hear people through masks. I mean, so not only that, it's very hot. You don't want to be outside that long anyways. And now since you can't go under a tent or in a garage paddock because they have them all, half of them are blocked off anyhow. It's different. It really is.
Well, but, and I'd imagine for anyone who's coming in fresh. I mean, for me, I'm still a novice to intermediate as far as like who actually are fast driver. I mean, that's the thing. When we talk about people who are fast, we're talking about people we know who are fast, not like really actually fast people. Like when you get in with a real race car driver, it's incredible when you figure out how horrible you are at driving a car. But like there's something to be said where if you were really, really fresh to what this was, right? I can't imagine doing this without an instructor sitting next to me. lead follow on a walkie-talkie is not the same.
It's like playing a video game that was designed for HD in like standard definition on a CRT, and basically you're looking through a tiny little microscope.
It would literally, like, I've never golfed a day in my life. It would be like me trying to go golf without anybody helping me.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Oh,
Racing
wicked. Absolutely.
on the track, whether it be, for time, wheel to wheel, anything, just getting yourself on the track is dangerous. So not having any experience and then being told everything through a walkie-talkie that, no offense, probably isn't the greatest in quality, so you can't hear half the time because everybody forgets to hold the button down before they speak. and yeah, it's very scary. So, if this is your first time, I highly recommend waiting until they allow either, passengers, so an instructor inside the car, or, if you can be a passenger, take some ride-alongs.
Absolutely.
Because
ride-along changes the game.
Yeah, I mean that's the real changer. I mean, even I ask people to drive my car who are better than me because I like to see what I'm doing wrong.
It's incredible when you go out, especially, it really, the worst thing that can happen at a track day other than crashing is you go out for 3 of your 4 sessions. And then between your 3rd and 4th session, you say, you know what, screw it. I need to go out and ride along with my instructor. And so he takes you out in his, whatever bananas race car he's driving. And you just, like the Matrix, see every stupid mistake you made the whole day. And you've only got 1 session to play with to do it all right again. I hate that. And you're like, oh, you brake here?
Yeah, no, it's like loading up the Game Shark,
Right.
And just going straight to the final boss.
Right. And it's just funny when, like, sometimes your own stubbornness and like, oh man, this isn't flowing from turn 3 to turn 4 or whatever. And it's like, yeah, because you've been taking it wrong all day and you've been following other idiots in your own run group. All you had to do was this and you would have been great. And then you're like, okay, good. I've got 15 minutes to go have fun with that now. So always, if you have the opportunity to do a ride along, do it as early in the day as possible.
It's probably the best thing for me anyways. I'm a visual learner, so watching someone else, do it is the best for me. I mean, I can look at hardcore data off my data recorder for hours, and all I'm seeing is just numbers.
No, but I can't even watch track videos and glean anything from it until I've driven the track. And that means nothing to me. It's like it's like me learning guitar and just watching Kurt Cobain play at a concert. Like that doesn't help. It doesn't help me. I have no idea what that feels like. I have no idea what he's actually doing. I can watch it over and over and over again. It won't help me play a guitar better than I'm playing it now. So, all right. I think that's a good place to wrap. Thank you for coming on. And I'm sure you'll be on a lot because, I would have liked to be able to bring lots and lots and lots of people into Garage 42. Luckily, they are, however, doing private tours. So if Garage 42 is something that you want to see, maybe it's a place you want to store your car, join the little club, give them a call. But for now, this is what's up. We will do some in-person interviews there. I think I might do that with PTSRS at some point soon. I'm really looking forward to talking to him. He is a different kind of car person. Me and Eddie can talk about sway bars and tire technology and cooling your oil all day long, whereas this guy is so detail-oriented with how cars are built, designed, and marketed that he has a set of knowledge that I only brush the surface. So that'll be fun. But thanks again, Eddy Segal, my boy. I miss you.
Thank you for having me. Miss you too, buddy.
All right.
Hopefully we'll get together soon.
Well, don't forget to respect the drive.